University of Hartford. She's an evaluator and trainer for driver rehabilitation program at Moss Rehab Driving Program in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. And she is a certified driver rehab specialist with over 16 years of experience in the field. So please welcome Lynne Mason.
Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me? In the back? Good? Okay. I guess we covered that, so we are good. Just a little bit brief history of Moss Rehab. Our program has been serving the community for over 40 years. We provide services to those in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and we do hit a little bit of Maryland. I don't usually head into Maryland. They usually come to us in Delaware. We are one of the largest programs on the East Coast. We have 6 vehicles. There are only 3 of us, plus the secretary. She is our world. She is our everything. We have 3 cars, 2 full-size high-tech vans, and 1 low-tech minivan. So who refers to a rehab driving program? Typically, family physicians, neurologists, physiatrists, neurosurgeons, and neurooptometrists. Sometimes the DMV gets involved. If someone is going through a medical review process and it's not going well for whatever reason, we get those referrals as well. Our program is approved and licensed by the state of Delaware. Family members also sometimes refer loved ones to our program, whether they have concerns about their driving, whether they think they should not be driving any longer, whatever the case might be. And often we get self-referrals, clients who think that, they should be checked before they return to driving, whether it be after a stroke or any number of illnesses or injuries. So that happens more often than you might think. Many clients are very self-aware and know that they need to be evaluated before returning to driving. What is involved? What is involved in a driving evaluation? First, we need clearance or one of our referral forms filled out by the doctor, whether it be an MD, a DO, an OD, or a certified nurse practitioner. The person has to have either a valid driver's license or a permit. If they do not, because the license has been medically suspended. We do work, and we fortunately have a very close relationship with the Delaware Motor Vehicle Department. Most driver rehab programs, and certainly ours is no exception, we are able to get a temporary license to work with that client to see if relicensure is possible. It is a bit of a process, and if there are any physicians in here, you may have experienced this in the past. Sometimes it ends up being like a catch-22. The DMV, I'll request the temporary permit from the DMV. The DMV will then turn and say, okay, we need a medical form filled out by the doctor. The doctor will then turn around to me and say, I'm not filling out this form because there's questions on there that says, do you feel like this person is capable of driving? So it's like a big circle of a catch-22. And I say to the doctor, okay, you need to fill out this form to the best of your ability. Answer the question, I don't know, needs to be evaluated by Moss Rehab. You don't have to check yes, you don't have to say no. You just say, I'm not sure, please let them be evaluated, and that at least leaves it open-ended so that the process can continue. Because if they say no, the process stops, and that's the end of it. Until they say, I don't know, let them be evaluated, then the process can continue. So for any of those physicians that may be out there, that's how it works. If you need to ask me further questions about that, please see me after. I'm happy to answer any questions. And in those cases where we do have a temporary license, that license always stays in our possession. It is never in the client's possession so that we can determine if they are safe. If it is determined that they are safe, they will usually then have to take the road test at motor vehicles in addition to whatever we have them do, whether they need equipment or not. And then once the state determines that they're safe, then they will reissue the driver's license. Then the temporary is no longer valid. They're good to go once the state has determined that their driving privilege is restored. So the temporary license is never in the hands of the client. You never have to worry that, well, I should say, they should not be driving with anybody else, but our program. And we are in dual control vehicles. They're only driving with us. We are professionals. We have years of experience. So, and the last step in the process is to schedule an appointment. We do have 2 locations here in Delaware. I'm assuming most of you are from here. We do have 5 locations in general, but speaking mostly about Delaware, we have one here in Wilmington. It's on Folk Road. We are affiliated with Christiana Care, so we're across the street from Brandywine High School at the Christiana Care location. And then we also are fortunate enough to have one in Rehoboth Beach, and we're affiliated with Baby Healthcare. So first is the clinical evaluation. The first part of that is a brief interview. Find out what their driving habits are. What type of vehicle they have. What is normal driving for them? Do they just drive locally? Do they drive on the highway? Do they drive cross country? Do they drive to Florida every winter? Are they just driving to the store, the barber, church, whatever? Is it just within a 5-mile radius, or are they driving back and forth to work 30 miles to and from every day? That's important to know, because some people, if it's just a 5-minute trip, I'm not necessarily going to throw them on 95, which on our Wilmington route, that is part of our course. If they adamantly deny that they drive on highways like 95, 495, 295, whatever, Route 1, then, if it's a little old lady or whatever, I'm not going to make them go on 95. For many of them, that's just too scary, and they won't do it normally, so I won't make them do it. But I will also note on their evaluation to the doctor that that is not something I tested. The client denies driving on roads such as these, and therefore they should not be driving on roads like that. Unfortunately, in the state of Delaware and in most states, there are no restrictions that can be added to a driver's license saying that this driver should not be driving on a highway or anything like that. They don't do restrictions like that. In addition to what kind of driving they do, stuff like that, have they had any tickets or accidents in the past 3 years? That's important information. A lot of people usually are pretty frank and will give you honest answers. And this isn't so much with our stroke populations, but more with our folks that have, like, say, MS, neuropathy. Those are the people that will tell you the truth and say, yeah, I've had a fender bender, or I'm picking up my leg to get it from the gas to the brake, and yeah, I hit the sign, or I hit the bumper of the car in front of me when I was trying to park, something like that. So they're the ones who will be pretty frank with you and tell you what's been going on. Strokes, usually their doctors tell them once they leave acute care, you're not driving, or their therapists are telling them you shouldn't be driving. Somebody along the line, usually in the acute care setting, is telling them no driving until you've been evaluated. And that's when they come see us. So usually they are pretty good, and they adhere to those precautions. More questions that we ask are, have you had any episodes of getting lost? Again, in this population, for the stroke population, not quite as important, but sometimes that is. What is their support system, current and in the future? God forbid, if they fail this evaluation, I want to know what's going to happen. Do they have a spouse that drives? Do they have children in the area that can run them on their errands, take them to the grocery store? Do they live in a retirement community that has transportation available to them to run them to doctors, the grocery store, the pharmacy, whatever? These are all important questions to know. And it sounds like this takes forever. It really takes like 15 minutes. It goes pretty quick. Another thing we also ask them is the medications that they're on and a brief medical history. I don't need to know the names of the medications because they're usually this long. I can't spell them. They can't say them. I want to know what they're for. I want to know if they're on 10 hypertension medicines. And then that usually leads to more conversation. Typically after a stroke, you're on high blood pressure medicine, you're on cholesterol medicine, usually a blood thinner, sometimes a water pill. But then that leads to, oh yeah, I have diabetes. So then I ask, do you have any neuropathy? Do you have tingling or numbness in your hands or your feet? But that's another part of the evaluation as well. And it just kind of opens up a dialogue as to what else is going on with you besides the stroke. There could be a lot more going on than just the stroke. Our physical assessment, pretty easy for those of you who are therapists, pretty standard. You assess their passive range of motion if that's appropriate, or their active range of motion, or active assistive range of motion. Their strength, their grip, their coordination, and of course their sensation. Their visual assessment. We're assessing distance acuity with or without glasses. If they wear them for distance, of course with, or contacts if that's appropriate. We do assess color perception and depth perception, saccades, pursuits, and peripheral vision. For our cognitive memory testing, we usually do this very informally. Some of it's just like immediate recall, like a neurologist would do in their office. You know, I'm going to say 4 numbers. I ask you to repeat them. Then I'm going to ask you to repeat them backwards. And then we do a paper pencil task. Probably most of you know what Trails B is. We do that. That's shown to tell us a lot of information about how a person scans, visually scans. And if you think about it, visual scanning is huge when you're driving. You don't think about it because you all do it all the time. But if they can't scan that page to find the next number or letter, they're going to have trouble out on the road. If they can't follow the sequence of steps of 1A, 2B, 3C, and granted, those numbers, if you're not familiar with Trails B, it's numbers and letters all over the page, and you have to connect them 1A, 2B, 3C, and they're everywhere. They're all mixed up. So you have to find them and connect them in that order. So it's following a sequence, remembering the directions, visual scanning. All of those 3 are very important for driving. Vision perception. We use the MVPT, which I'm sure a lot of you, again, know, which assesses how the brain is interpreting what the eyes are seeing. Some people, that is extremely affected after a stroke. Some people, not at all. It just depends on the person. That's why every person is an individual. Reaction time. We have, depending on the location, but in Delaware, I use this little blue box, and it's I have a gas and a brake pedal. It's hooked up to the machine. Basically, they put their foot on the gas, a green light appears. When they see the red, boom, they're supposed to hit the brake as fast as they can. Optimal is you want to be between 0.5 and 0.75. So half a second to 3/4 of a second is normal. If they are way out of that range, then that's when we need to consider, maybe they can't drive with their right foot. Maybe they need to drive with their left foot. And I'll get into that in a minute. So after the clinical evaluation is when we do the behind the wheel. For this part, it is always, always, always done in one of our vehicles, and that is for safety reasons. We do have a dual brake in every one of our vehicles. At this point, this is when we determine... this part I forgot a slide, sorry. At this point, this is when we determine if someone can drive in the standard manner or if this is when they need special equipment to drive. If they are driving in the standard manner, our course consists of driving around the area closest to the location of the evaluation site. And as I said, we include multiple types of roads, protected and unprotected turns, which means with an arrow, without an arrow. At traffic lights as well as at stop signs. So making a left out of a shopping center where there could be traffic coming at you, but there's definitely traffic coming at you from the left and the right. Merging, highway driving, driving through a parking lot, parking in a regular parking spot. I don't make them parallel park on an evaluation. I'm sure you can agree most of us do not parallel park on a routine basis unless you work in the city. And if you do, kudos to you. If someone is unable to drive in the standard manner, we do have multiple options available to them to allow them to become safe and independent again. So if someone is a left CVA and has right hemiparesis, that presents with both right possibly and leg involvement. Right arm and leg involvement. They potentially would need a spinner knob and a left foot accelerator. If a person is a right CVA and has left hemiparesis, That presents with left arm involvement, and they potentially would need a spinner knob and a turn signal extension. And I have videos to show you, 2 brief videos. Alright, this is where I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. I'm sorry for the quality. These aren't the greatest, and I think I say something wrong in one of them, so bear with me. Where'd it go?
In front of you.
This is a left foot accelerator.
As you see, this portion here, there's a roller right behind it. This is called the gas shield. So if someone does have some function in their right foot, they could push on this all day long. This is a steel plate. They won't push the real gas pedal. It is locked into the floor. There is a little, I don't even know what to call it, but there is a way that it is locked into the floor, and that pin right there, the round, I think it's called a cotter pin, that's how you would remove it. You pull the pin up, you shift the whole device left, and that's how you remove it. And then, of course, this is how they would drive. So this is their gas pedal now, and then obviously the regular brake is in the middle. Now I'm sitting a little far back, so that's why it looks like I'm straining to reach the gas and the brake pedal. But I'm just doing that for video purposes. So I just wanted to show you what it would look like for someone who could not drive with their right foot because of right hemiparesis.
I meant to say left. Okay, now where to go? No, sorry. Next. There it is, sorry. This is the one I meant to show you first. This is the spinner knob. I'll show you on both sides, and then the arm behind it is the turn signal crossover, or extension, right turn signal extension. This gets better, hold on.
This would be a spinner knob. As you see, it can mount on the right side of the steering wheel, or it can be mounted on the left side, depending on if they're a right hemi or a left hemi. But in the case of a left hemi, we're going to put it on the right side of the steering wheel.
I meant to say right hemi.
And as you see behind, there's a turn signal crossover, which means if someone can't put on their turn signal with their left hand, there's an arm that attaches to the turn signal, and then it reaches behind the steering wheel. Hopefully I'm not making anybody dizzy. And push it down to the right or up to the left. And then you would put your hand back on the knob.
It's not so easy to video yourself, sorry.